Hello, this is Yaakov Kronenberg, and tonight another class in a series of classes on Capricorn ascendant and the Saturn and the different signs. Tonight we'll be talking about Saturn in the 12th house, in the sign of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, Saturn in Sagittarius can be difficult for a Capricorn ascendant because again it falls in the 12th house, the house of sorrow, of imprisonment, the house of chronic long-term health problems, the house of secret enemies. So it can be challenging to have. You don't like, but in general, you just don't like to have the ruling planet in what's considered a bad house, a house that's unconnected to the ascendant. Because you see, Saturn in Sagittarius is not. Saturn in Sagittarius doesn't. It works less. It's not. Saturn in Sagittarius is not a bad position at all, because Sagittarius is a benefic. Sagittarius is a good sign. It's a sign that's connected with Jupiter. But the nature of Jupiter and Saturn are the opposite. Saturn is contraction. Jupiter is expansion. So when they try, it's not considered dishonor or anything like that in astrology. Actually, Saturn doesn't work good in Cancer and Leo, in the sign of the lights. But in Sagittarius, it's what we call peregrine. It's neither good nor bad. It's but there is on one hand, it's going to lighten up the Saturn a little. It won't contract. Saturn won't contract as much. But there's going to be a difficulty because Saturn by nature wants to contract and Sagittarius wants to expand, so they never know. It can be a difficulty, right? I heard a number of astrologers I've talked with over the years, they say that Saturn-Jupiter aspects are among the most difficult of all the aspects because Jupiter is the expansion principle, it's principle of goodness, and whenever it gets in aspect with Saturn, it gets harmed. The Jupiter can get harmed a lot by an aspect. Jupiter can get harmed by a strong aspect from Saturn. It can take away a lot of the joy of life. There can be a lot of tension in the person, never knowing whether to expand or contract. Whenever they want to expand, the Saturn principle comes along and contracts them. And so it can be difficult. In any case, though, you have to look closely in all charts where you have Saturn in Sagittarius and a Capricorn ascendant. You got to look at the ruling planet. You got to look where that Jupiter is. So if that Jupiter also gets a bad aspect from Saturn, that could be a difficulty. If the aspect is good, on the other hand, so then it could sort of free it up more. I would say the Sagittarius, the Saturn. So you have to look closely at the dispositor to really get a good value of it. But in any case, again, someone who has their ruling planet in the 12th, per se, they'll be more interested in, on one hand, it could be an interest in spiritual things. Sagittarius rules spirituality, and the 12th house is connected with the people with strong 12th houses. They're interested in spirituality, and so maybe there'll be a leaning towards that in the chart. Tonight I want to look at a chart, actually, of a woman who also had Saturn in Sagittarius, Capricorn ascendant, but she had chart was a little bit distorted, so the Saturn fell in the 11th house. And so you see, when you have a situation like that, I think this is a good example of a chart to see exactly. You have to always try to figure out where that Saturn's going to work for. Will it work for the 12th house? Will it work for the 11th house? Will it work for both of them? So a lot of times an astrologer is going to have to use his intuition to try to figure it out. Sometimes he can ask questions, to really see where it's working. I tend to think it works for both of them, maybe for both of the houses, and maybe for one of the house that it's in, it could be a little bit more than for the house that it should be in. That's been my experience. It works for both, but a little bit more for the house that it's in. And a lot of times you'll have to combine the nature of the two. And so this woman, she was very famous actually in America. Her name was Irma Bombeck. She was a syndicated columnist. She was like a humorist columnist, and she wrote with a lot of, folk wisdom and stuff like that. That she would, write a column, and it would be humorous and sort of, with a message type of writer. And she became a really extraordinarily popular in America. She was like in almost any newspaper in the country you could open up and you could read her column, and she became very, very wealthy. And she was, what can I tell you about her? She was a devout Catholic. She went to a Catholic university, and I guess she became a lifelong supporter of that university, and she became a trustee of the college and devoted a lot of her time to helping that school. And so you see that really, remember, we always talk about a ruling planet in the 12th house, in the 11th house, is connected with groups and organizations, and so she became tremendously devoted to her thing. Sagittarius, of course, rules religion, and so it's a religious college, and you see that in her chart. And in her chart, it's interesting, she has Saturn exactly squared to Jupiter. And if you look at her chart is very unusual. She has 5 planets in Pisces, which is going to compete with the ascendant. Right? So on the one hand, even though she's a Capricorn ascendant, this chart is so tremendously Jupiterian, because you have 5 planets in Pisces, which rules Jupiter, and you have the ruling planet in Sagittarius, which rules Jupiter. So it's almost as if the Jupiter overtakes the Saturn in this chart. And so it's interesting. It's interesting in that respect. So here, in any case, I think maybe it held her back a little bit in life, but you see, because of that Saturn ruler connected with the 12th, she became a devout Catholic. You look at her chart; she has that really tight Venus Uranus conjunction, which didn't really affect her so much, at least, relationship-wise. She got married at an early age and stayed married to the same man. And that's because of that tight Saturn aspect with Jupiter. It kept her down. If you look at her chart, you see, so all those planets are in the 2nd house. The 2 best planets, of course, Jupiter and Venus, one in honor and one exalted, so she became extremely wealthy. And by nature, they're also connected with the 3rd house. They should be in the 3rd house, which is writing. And so you see the interest in her writing. And of course, she has Mercury in the house of money, so and it's surrounded by benefics, which is a tremendous good fortune for Mercury. If you have a planet surrounded on both sides by benefics, it makes that planet tremendously important. It's tremendously good. It gets good from both planets. So she was an exceptional writer, and so you see where her career thing came in. But if you're looking on the other hand, so that's going to alter her ascendant a lot. This is an example of a chart where you see that the ascendant almost gets overpowered by something else, by that Jupiterian influence. But it's interesting to note that really the humorists of the zodiac are actually the Capricornians. the Capricornians, they suffer so much, they say Capricorns suffer in life, and because they're always contracting, they always feel like the doors are closed, the walls are closing in on them, and they're in the middle, and there's nothing they can do, and they're going to get crushed. That's the principle of contraction, and so they make life. They have to make the best out of everything, and so they become the humorous of the zodiac to compensate for all their suffering. And so you see, she does have that Capricorn ascendant, but she used it. Instead of suffering, she wrote about it. She wrote about the travels of life and applied her wisdom to it, so people could laugh at all the sufferings that went on in life. And so it's a very, very interesting chart, actually. And I thank everybody for listening.